My wife is allergic to Thursday nights at home. She claims it's Pilates. I claim it's nonsense. Bennett Waverly here, and I make custom furniture for a living. 38 years old, hands that know wood grain better than most people know their own faces, and a workshop in the basement that smells like cedar shavings and honest work. I learned precision in the Army, patience from my father, and skepticism from watching people lie about what they really want. Claudia started her Thursday routine 6 weeks ago. Every Thursday at 6:30 sharp, she'd announce she was heading to Pilates with Sandra and wouldn't return until nearly 10. She'd come home with damp hair, a protein shake, and this particular smile that made my teeth itch. "How was class?" I'd ask, not looking up from whatever piece I was sanding. "Oh, challenging. Sandra really pushes us." Except Sandra Martinez, her actual Pilates instructor, posts her class schedules on Instagram every week. Thursday evenings are reserved for her date nights with her husband. Has been for months. I'm not the jealous type, never have been, but I am the observant type, and when patterns emerge, I notice them. Claudia's Thursday absences synchronized too precisely with other changes. New underwear that never made it into the laundry rotation. Text messages that made her smile in ways my jokes hadn't managed in years. A sudden interest in wearing perfume to the grocery store. The real clincher came 3 weeks ago when my sister Margot called during one of Claudia's alleged fitness sessions. "Is Claudia around?" Margot asked. "Simon's working late again and I thought maybe we could grab dinner." Simon Trent, my brother-in-law, married to Margot for 8 years, real estate broker with an office downtown and a smile that sells houses to people who can't afford them. Thursday night work sessions had become his new specialty too. "She's at Pilates," I told Margot, watching through the kitchen window as a cardinal landed on my workbench outside. "Every Thursday now." "Oh." A pause. Simon mentioned he might be free Thursday nights soon. Maybe we could all do something together. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop for an hour, running my thumb along the grain of a walnut board I'd been saving for something special. The wood told me things that voices couldn't. It revealed its flaws under pressure, showed its true character when tested. People aren't that different. Thursday came again. Claudia emerged from our bedroom wearing yoga pants that cost more than my monthly phone bill and a tank top that had never seen actual exercise. "Pilates?" I asked. "You know it." She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of the perfume she claimed to hate. "Don't wait up." I didn't. Instead, I drove to Moretti's, the Italian place on 5th Street where Margot likes their breadsticks. She was there alone, picking at a Caesar salad and looking like someone had canceled Christmas. "Simon's working late again," she said when I slid into the booth across from her. "Third Thursday in a row." Margot is 5 years older than me, a pediatrician with steady hands and a sharp mind that cuts through pretense like a scalpel. She raised me after our parents died in a car wreck when I was 17, put herself through medical school while making sure I graduated high school and didn't end up in jail or worse. "What kind of work keeps him busy every Thursday?" I asked. "Property showings. Says Thursday evenings are when serious buyers want to look." She stabbed a crouton. "Funny thing is, his assistant mentioned they haven't had many evening appointments lately." We ate in silence for a while, both of us thinking thoughts we weren't ready to voice. The restaurant hummed with conversation and clinking silverware. Normal people living normal lives without spouses who developed mysterious weekly allergies to being home. "Bennett," Margot said finally, "do you think we're being paranoid?" "I think we're being observant." "There's a difference?" "Paranoid people see patterns that aren't there. Observant people see patterns that are." She nodded slowly. "So what do observant people do with patterns they don't like?" "They gather more information." The next morning, I looked up Alistair Finch in the phone book. Private investigator, former police detective, office above Murphy's Tavern on Commercial Street. His ad was smaller than the others, just his name and number with discreet inquiries underneath. I called from my workshop, surrounded by the smell of wood stain and the comfort of tools that did exactly what they were designed to do. Finch Investigations. I need to hire someone. Most people do, or they wouldn't be calling. You got a name? Bennett Waverly. You got a problem, Bennett Waverly? I got a wife who goes to Pilates classes that don't exist. A pause. How long this been going on? 6 weeks. You sure you want to see what's in Pandora's box, kid? I looked at the walnut board on my workbench, its grain running straight and true, until a small knot interrupted the pattern near one end. The knot didn't make the wood worthless. It just made it different than it appeared. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. My office. Tomorrow at 10. Bring 500 cash and a recent photo of your wife. He hung up before I could ask questions, which told me everything I needed to know about Alistair Finch. He was a man who understood that some conversations were better held in person. That evening, Claudia made dinner. Chicken parmesan with a side salad, nothing fancy but prepared with the kind of attention she used to give everything before Thursdays became complicated. How was work? She asked, settling into the chair across from me. Finished the Morrison dresser, started on a bookshelf for the Hendersons. That's nice. We ate quietly, the silence filled with the sound of forks against plates and the dishwasher humming in the background. Married people develop a rhythm over time, a comfortable cadence of shared meals and familiar conversations. Ours had developed a skip lately, like a record with a scratch that makes the needle jump. What are you doing tomorrow? Claudia asked. Meeting with a potential client. You? Lunch with Mara. Then I need to stop by the office. Mara was Claudia's best friend, a woman who collected gossip like some people collect stamps and dispensed it with the precision of a pharmacist measuring pills. If anyone knew about Claudia's Thursday activities, it would be Mara. Tell her I said hello. I will. After dinner, Claudia went upstairs to take a bath. I cleaned the dishes and thought about patterns, about the difference between paranoia and observation, about the way wood reveals its secrets when you know how to look. My phone buzzed. Text from Margot. Simon just canceled dinner tomorrow. Says he has to prepare for Thursday showings. I typed back, lots of preparation needed for Pilates too, apparently. What do? We learn more. The next morning, I drove to Commercial Street. Murphy's Tavern occupied the ground floor of a brick building that had seen better decades, its windows dark and its neon sign flickering intermittently. A narrow staircase beside the entrance led to the second floor, where a frosted glass door bore the words, A. Finch, Private Investigations, in faded gold lettering. I knocked. It's open. The office looked like something from a movie about private detectives, all dark wood and filing cabinets with a desk that had probably witnessed more confessions than most churches. Alistair Finch sat behind it, a man in his 50s with gray hair and eyes that had seen enough to stop being surprised by anything. Bennett Waverly? That's me. Sit down. Coffee? Sure. He poured 2 cups from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration and slid one across the desk. The coffee tasted like it looked, but it was hot and caffeinated, which covered the important bases. Tell me about your wife. I pulled out the photo I'd taken from our wedding album. Claudia in her bridesmaid's dress from my cousin's wedding last year, smiling at something outside the frame. Claudia Waverly, 36, runs a small PR consulting business from an office on Exchange Street. Married 7 years, no kids, started acting strange 6 weeks ago. Define strange. Thursday night absences, claims she's going to Pilates, but the instructor doesn't have Thursday classes. Comes home with wet hair and protein shakes, wearing perfume she says she doesn't like. Finch studied the photo. You think she's having an affair? I think she's lying about where she goes on Thursday nights. Same thing, usually. He set the photo on his desk. What makes you think it's not just girls' night out or something innocent? My brother-in-law started working late every Thursday around the same time. That got his attention. His eyes sharpened, and he leaned forward slightly. Brother-in-law? Simon Trent, married to my sister, real estate broker. You think they're together? I think I want to know where my wife goes on Thursday nights. Finch nodded slowly. Standard surveillance runs $300 a day plus expenses. Photos, video if possible, written report of activities. You want me to follow her tomorrow? I pulled $500 bills from my wallet and placed them on the desk. I want you to follow them both. Both? If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to everyone and buy my sister dinner. If I'm right, I stood up. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Finch pocketed the money. You got their license plates? I gave him the information, along with descriptions of their cars and their usual routines. He wrote everything in a notebook with handwriting that belonged on prescriptions. One more thing, he said, as I reached the door. You sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I thought about the walnut board in my workshop, about the knot that interrupted its perfect grain. The knot didn't disappear just because you ignored it. It was still there, still affecting the wood's strength and character. I'm sure. Thursday arrived like a storm you can see coming from miles away. Claudia spent extra time getting ready, changing clothes twice before settling on jeans that fit like they were painted on, and a sweater that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Big Pilates session tonight? I asked. Sandra's introducing some new techniques. Should be challenging. She kissed me goodbye, and I watched from the window as she backed out of the driveway in her silver Honda, at exactly 6:30, just like clockwork. My phone rang at 8:15. Finch, what do you have? You sitting down? Should I be? Meet me at Murphy's. Bring cash. And Bennett? Yeah? Bring a stiff drink, too. You're going to need it. Murphy's Tavern at 8:30 on a Thursday night hosted the usual collection of people who had nowhere better to be. Construction workers still wearing their work boots, office types loosening their ties, and a bartender named Rita who knew everyone's story and kept most of their secrets. I found Alistair Finch in a corner booth, nursing a whiskey and guarding a manila envelope like it contained state secrets. Maybe it did. Bourbon, I told Rita when she appeared at my elbow. Make it a double, Finch suggested. That didn't sound promising. Rita brought my drink and disappeared, recognizing the kind of conversation that required privacy. I slid into the booth across from Finch and waited. Your instincts were right, he said, pushing the envelope toward me. Your wife and your brother-in-law have been meeting every Thursday for 6 weeks. Same routine, same place, same time. I opened the envelope. The first photograph showed Claudia's Honda parked next to Simon's black BMW in the lot of the Sleepy Inn Motel on Route 202. The second showed them walking into room 127, Simon's hand on the small of her back, in a gesture that was anything but accidental. There's more, Finch said. The photos told a story that required no interpretation. Claudia and Simon entering the motel room at 7:15. Simon leaving alone at 8:45, adjusting his tie. Claudia emerging 10 minutes later, hair damp, carrying the same protein shake bottle she brought home every Thursday. They've got it down to a science, Finch continued. He gets there first, checks in, pays cash. She arrives exactly 15 minutes later. He leaves first, she follows 10 minutes after. Professional-level operational security. I studied a photo of them in the motel parking lot, Simon lighting a cigarette while Claudia checked her phone. They looked comfortable together, familiar in the way people get when they've established routines. How long you think this has been going on? I asked. Hard to say, but they're not acting like people in the early stages of an affair. No nervous glances, no hesitation. This looks established. The bourbon tasted like regret and poor decisions. I set the glass down and looked at the remaining photos. Simon and Claudia at coffee shops, holding hands across small tables. walking together through downtown, her arm linked through his, kissing in his car outside her office. "Your brother-in-law's not very careful," Finch observed. "Real estate guys usually understand the importance of location. Simon never was the brightest bulb, smart enough to fool two spouses for 6 weeks. That stung because it was true. I'd suspected something was wrong, but I'd attributed Claudia's behavior to work stress or marriage doldrums or any of a dozen other explanations that didn't involve betrayal." "What do you want to do with this?" Finch asked. Good question. The photos proved what I'd suspected, but knowing and acting on knowledge were different animals entirely. I could confront Claudia, demand explanations and apologies and promises to do better. I could pretend I'd never seen the evidence and hope the affair burned itself out naturally, or I could do something else entirely. "Make copies," I said. "Lots of copies." "Planning something specific?" "Planning to make sure the truth gets the attention it deserves." Finch nodded. "Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it tastes better when it's properly prepared." "How long will copies take?" "I can have them ready tomorrow morning. What do you need?" 2 complete sets. High quality, clear images, everything organized chronologically. "You got it." He finished his whiskey. "One piece of advice?" "Yeah?" "Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with the consequences. This kind of thing tends to get messy fast." I thought about Margot, about the way she'd looked picking at her salad while Simon worked his mysterious Thursday overtime, about the trust she'd placed in a man who was using her marriage as cover for his affair with her brother's wife. "It's already messy," I said. "I'm just going to make it honest." The next morning, I called my lawyer. David Chen had handled the legal work when I started my furniture business, helped me navigate contracts and liability issues with the steady competence of someone who understood that most problems were solvable if you approached them systematically. "Bennett, what can I do for you?" "I need to see you today. It's about Claudia." "Everything all right?" "Define all right." "I'll make time at 2 o'clock. I spent the morning in my workshop, trying to focus on the Henderson bookshelf, but finding my attention wandering to the envelope of photographs locked in my desk drawer. Wood demanded concentration, precision, patience. Revenge required the same qualities, but applied to human nature instead of natural materials. At noon, I drove to Finch's office and collected 2 sets of photographs, each one professionally printed and organized in chronological order. The evidence was comprehensive, undeniable, and devastating. "You sure about this?" Finch asked as he handed me the packages. "I'm sure about the truth. Everything else we'll figure out as we go." David Chen's office occupied the 3rd floor of a renovated warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture that managed to look both professional and approachable. He'd built his practice on the principle that legal problems were usually people problems in disguise. "Show me what you've got," he said after his secretary brought coffee and closed the door. I spread the photographs across his conference table like a dealer laying out cards. David studied them without comment, his expression growing more serious as the story unfolded. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 weeks. Possibly longer." "You want to file for divorce?" "I want to understand my options." David leaned back in his chair. "Maine is a no-fault state, so adultery doesn't affect property division or alimony, but it can influence custody decisions if children are involved, and it provides grounds for immediate separation without waiting periods." "No kids." "Then your main considerations are financial. Joint assets, business interests, property division. You own your house?" "Jointly. Bought it 3 years ago." "Business?" "Mine alone. Started it before we married, kept it separate." "Good. That simplifies things." He gestured at the photographs. "This evidence is solid. Professional surveillance, clear documentation, established pattern of behavior. If you want a quick, clean divorce, this gives you leverage." "What if I want something else?" "Such as?" "What if I want them to face consequences beyond lawyers and paperwork?" David's expression shifted into the careful neutrality lawyers adopt when clients start talking about things that might require disclaimers. Bennett, I understand you're angry. Betrayal like this cuts deep. But whatever you're thinking, make sure it stays legal. Revenge fantasies have a way of becoming real problems. I'm not talking about anything illegal. I'm talking about truth and consequences. Whose truth? Whose consequences? Simon's married to my sister. She deserves to know what kind of man she's sharing a bed with. David nodded slowly. That's your decision. But once you tell her, you can't control what happens next. Family situations get complicated fast. They're already complicated. I'm just going to make them honest. I left David's office with one set of photographs and a clear understanding of my legal position. The second set rode in my passenger seat as I drove across town to Margot's house, a tidy colonial in a neighborhood where people kept their lawns trimmed and their secrets buried. Margot answered the door wearing scrubs, her hair pulled back in the practical ponytail she favored during long days at the clinic. Bennett, what are you doing here? We need to talk. She led me to her kitchen, where afternoon sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a garden Simon had promised to help her plant, but never found time to finish. The room smelled like coffee and the vanilla candles she burned to mask the scent of whatever medical antiseptic clung to her clothes. You look serious, she said. I am serious. I placed the envelope on her kitchen table, the same way Finch had presented evidence to me the night before. Some conversations required props. What's this? Pictures of Simon and Claudia. Margot's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, understanding, denial, and finally a kind of resigned sadness that told me she'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to name it. How long have you known? She asked. Since yesterday. I hired a private investigator. She opened the envelope with the careful precision she used for medical procedures, examining each photograph methodically. Her hands remained steady, but I could see the tension building in her shoulders. Every Thursday, she said finally. Every Thursday. The same motel? Same room, even. They've got it down to a routine. Margot set the photos aside and walked to the window, looking out at her unfinished garden. I knew something was wrong. Simon's been distant, distracted, working late, taking phone calls in other rooms. I told myself it was job stress. I told myself the same thing about Claudia. How long do you think it's been going on? Finch thinks at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. She turned back to face me. What do you want to do about it? I want them to face the truth. Both of them at the same time. You mean confront them? I mean ambush them. Tomorrow night at the motel. Make them explain themselves while they're still wearing each other's lies. Margot considered this, her medical training warring with her emotional response. She was a woman who solved problems systematically, but some problems required more than systematic solutions. That's cruel, she said. So is what they've been doing to us. 2 wrongs don't make a right? No. But sometimes they make things even. She walked back to the table and looked at the photographs again, studying her husband's face as he kissed another woman in a motel parking lot. I trusted him, she said quietly. I trusted her. What happens after we confront them? That depends on what they say and how they say it. Margot was quiet for a long moment, weighing options with the same care she used to diagnose patients. Finally, she looked up at me with eyes that had made a decision. Thursday night? Thursday night? What time? 7:30. They should be settled in by then. And we just knock on the door? We knock on the door. She nodded once, the gesture of someone committing to a course of action despite its potential consequences. All right, she said. But Bennett? Yeah? After this, everything changes. Our marriages, our family, everything. You sure you're ready for that? I thought about the walnut board in my workshop, about the knot that interrupted its perfect grain. The knot was part of the wood's character now, something that had to be worked around or incorporated into the final design. Everything already changed, I said. We just didn't know it yet. Thursday arrived with the kind of gray October weather that made everything look tired. I spent the day in my workshop, trying to focus on the Henderson bookshelf, but finding my attention wandering to the clock on the wall. Time moved differently when you were waiting for something important to happen. At 6 o'clock, I cleaned my tools and locked the workshop. Claudia was upstairs getting ready for her fictional Pilates class, taking the same extra care with her appearance that had become part of the Thursday routine. "Working late tonight?" she called from the bedroom. "Might watch some television. Nothing special planned. I should be home by 10. Drive safe." The lies came easily now, polished by repetition into something that almost resembled normal conversation. We'd become actors in a play where everyone knew their lines, but nobody believed the story. I waited until her Honda disappeared around the corner, then drove to Margot's house. She was waiting on the front porch, wearing jeans and a dark sweater that made her look like someone preparing for a covert operation. "You ready for this?" I asked as she got into my truck. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The Sleepy Inn Motel squatted on Route 202 like something left over from a more optimistic era, its neon sign promising color television and air conditioning to travelers who weren't particular about amenities. Room 127 was on the ground floor, facing the parking lot where Simon's BMW and Claudia's Honda sat side by side like co-conspirators. We parked 3 spaces away and waited. Through the thin curtains, we could see movement and shadows, the suggestion of people who thought they were invisible. "Last chance to change your mind," I told Margot. "They made their choice 6 weeks ago. Now they get to explain it." At 7:30 exactly, we walked to room 127 and knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps that sounded like destiny arriving ahead of schedule. "Housekeeping," Margot called, her voice steady despite the circumstances. The movement inside stopped. We could hear whispered conversation, urgent and panicked. "We're closed," Simon's voice called through the door. "Hotel management," I said. "We need to speak with you." More whispered conversation, then footsteps approaching the door. It opened 6 inches, revealing Simon's face in the gap, his hair disheveled and his shirt unbuttoned. "What do you want?" I pushed the door open and stepped inside, Margot right behind me. Simon stumbled backward, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and pure terror in the space of 3 seconds. Claudia sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a sheet around herself like armor that had arrived too late for the battle. Her hair was damp, her makeup smeared, her expression frozen in the particular horror of someone caught in an act they thought was secret. "Surprise," I said. "It's family bonding night." The room smelled like cheap air freshener and expensive mistakes. A bottle of wine sat on the nightstand next to Simon's wallet and Claudia's purse, the props of an affair that had developed its own rituals and traditions. "Bennett," Claudia started, her voice pitched higher than usual. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you're having an affair with my sister's husband in a motel room you've been renting every Thursday for 6 weeks. Simon tried to button his shirt with hands that shook slightly. "Now hold on. We can explain." "Please do," Margot said, her voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded volcanic eruptions. "I'm very interested in your explanation." "It just happened," Claudia said. "We didn't plan it." "You didn't plan to meet at the same motel every Thursday at the same time? That seems like a lot of coincidence." "We tried to stop," Simon added, as if good intentions should count for something. "When?" I asked. "When did you try to stop?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing that any answer would only make things worse. Margot walked to the nightstand and picked up the wine bottle. Pinot Grigio, Claudia's favorite. "You remembered her preferences, Simon. How thoughtful." "Margot, please. Let me explain." Explain what? How you've been lying to me for 6 weeks? How you've been using our marriage as cover while you had an affair with my brother's wife? The words hit Simon like physical blows. He sank into the room's single chair, his face pale and his confidence evaporating. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Claudia said. How was it supposed to happen? I asked. You were going to leave me for Simon, and he was going to leave Margot? Or were you just going to keep sneaking around indefinitely? We hadn't decided. You hadn't decided. After 6 weeks of Thursday meetings, you hadn't decided what you wanted. Claudia's composure cracked. You don't understand. You've been distant, cold, working all the time, never talking to me. So you decided to talk to Simon instead. It wasn't like that. What was it like? She looked at Simon, seeking support that wasn't coming. He sat in the chair like a man watching his life collapse in real time. We connected, she said finally. We understood each other. You understood each other so well that you had to sneak around and lie about it. Margot set the wine bottle down with more force than necessary. Simon, look at me. He raised his eyes reluctantly. 8 years, she said. 8 years of marriage? And this is how you handle problems? By having an affair with my sister-in-law? I never meant to hurt you. But you did it anyway. Yes. The admission hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had burned down everything important. Simon's honesty, arriving too late to matter, only made the betrayal more complete. What happens now? Claudia asked. Now you get to explain to everyone else, I said. Your friends, your clients, your family, everyone who thought they knew who you were. You can't tell people. Watch me. Simon stood up, trying to recover some authority. You're making a mistake, Bennett. This can be handled quietly, between family. Family? Margot's voice could have cut glass. You want to talk about family now? I mean, we can work this out. The way you worked out your marriage vows? Simon's face flushed. Don't get righteous with me, Margot. You haven't exactly been the most attentive wife lately. Wrong thing to say. Margot stepped forward, and for a moment I thought she might hit him. Instead, she smiled, which was somehow more frightening. You're right, she said. I've been working 60-hour weeks at the clinic, trying to save children's lives. How inattentive of me. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. You're blaming me for your affair. I'm not blaming anyone. You just blamed me. Simon looked around the room as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. This is getting out of hand. This got out of hand 6 weeks ago, I said. We're just catching up. Claudia tried a different approach. Bennett, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through our problems. Our problems? You mean the problem where you've been lying to me for 6 weeks? I mean our marriage problems, the reasons I turned to Simon in the first place. So this is my fault too. I didn't say that. You implied it. She stood up, still clutching the sheet, trying to recover some dignity from a situation that had none to spare. I'm saying marriages are complicated. Ours just got simpler. What does that mean? It means you can pack your things and find somewhere else to complicate. The finality in my voice seemed to reach her. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 7 years ago, before Thursdays became problematic. Bennett, please. Please what? Don't throw away 7 years over a mistake. 6 weeks of Thursday meetings isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You made it every week. Margot was studying Simon with the clinical detachment she used to examine patients. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. What? Claudia. Do you love her? Simon looked at Claudia, then at Margot, then at the floor. It's complicated. It's not complicated. Either you love her or you don't. I love you too. That's not an answer. I don't know. You don't know if you love the woman you've been having an affair with for 6 weeks. I'm confused. You're pathetic. Margot walked to the door and opened it. Cool evening air drifted into the overheated room, carrying the smell of autumn and the promise of change. I'm leaving, she announced. Simon, you can come home when you're ready to have an honest conversation about our marriage. Claudia, I hope you find whatever you're looking for. She walked out without looking back, leaving the rest of us to sort through the wreckage of the evening. I followed her to the parking lot, where she stood beside my truck with her arms crossed and her face set in the expression she wore when delivering bad news to parents. You all right? I asked. No, but I will be. What are you going to do? I'm going to go home and think about what kind of life I want to build from here. And Simon? Simon can figure out his own life. We drove back to her house in silence, both of us processing the evening's revelations. Confronting betrayal was supposed to provide closure, but it mostly just provided clarity. The people we'd trusted had made choices that revealed who they really were underneath the roles they played. Thank you, Margot said as I walked her to her front door. For what? For caring enough to find the truth. I'm sorry the truth was so ugly. The truth usually is, but at least now we know where we stand. I drove home through streets that looked the same but felt different, like returning to a familiar place after a long absence. The house was dark, Claudia's Honda absent from the driveway. She was probably still at the motel, trying to convince Simon to make decisions he wasn't capable of making. In my workshop, I turned on the lights and looked at the Henderson bookshelf, half finished and waiting for attention. Wood was honest material. It revealed its character under pressure, showed its flaws when tested, but never pretended to be something it wasn't. People were more complicated, but the principles were the same. Apply enough pressure, and you learned what someone was really made of. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. This isn't over. I deleted it without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having, especially with people who still thought they had something to negotiate. Thursday was over, but the consequences were just beginning. Friday morning brought rain and a knock on my door at 7:30. I answered it to find Simon standing on my porch, looking like he'd slept in his car and shaved with a butter knife. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. I started to close the door, but he put his hand against it. Bennett, please, 5 minutes. You've got 2. He followed me to the kitchen, where I poured coffee and tried to decide if offering him a cup would be polite or stupid. I settled on stupid and kept the pot to myself. Last night got out of hand, he said. Last night was overdue. I want to make this right. You can't. I can try. I leaned against the counter and studied my brother-in-law. Simon had always been the kind of man who solved problems by talking his way around them, using charm and persistence to avoid consequences. It worked well in real estate, less well in marriages. What do you want, Simon? I want us to handle this like adults. Adults don't have affairs with their in-laws. Adults make mistakes. Adults own their mistakes. They don't try to negotiate their way out of them. Simon ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from family dinners when he was trying to sell everyone on his latest business idea. Look, what happened between Claudia and me was wrong. I know that, but destroying 2 marriages isn't going to fix anything. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to pretend it isn't already destroyed. Margot doesn't have to know the details. Margot already knows the details. She knows what you told her, but if we all agree to work on our marriages, to get counseling, maybe we can save something. I set my coffee cup down and looked at Simon directly. You want me to help you lie to my sister. I want you to help us all move forward. By pretending last night didn't happen. By focusing on solutions instead of problems. The problem is that you've been having an affair with my wife. The solution is that you stop. It's already stopped. As of when? As of last night. Because you got caught. Because I realized it was wrong. I almost laughed. Simon's moral awakening, arriving precisely when it became convenient, was the kind of timing that would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to leave my house and never come back. You're going to tell Margot the truth about everything, not just the parts that make you look better. And you're going to stay away from Claudia. And if I don't? Then everyone in town learns about your Thursday meetings, your clients, your business associates, your golf buddies, everyone." Simon's face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me. That would hurt Margot, too." "Margot can handle the truth. Can you?" He stood up, his chair scraping against the kitchen floor. "You're making a mistake, Bennett. The mistake was trusting you. This isn't over." "Yeah, it is." After he left, I called Alistair Finch. "You got more work for me?" he asked. "I might. Simon just paid me a visit." "Threatening or pleading?" "Both. They usually try negotiating first. When that doesn't work, they get creative." "What kind of creative?" "Depends on how much they have to lose. Your brother-in-law got a business to protect?" "Real estate office. Reputation matters in that line of work." "Then he'll probably try to discredit you before you can discredit him. Make you look like the crazy, jealous husband who can't be trusted." "Can he do that?" "He can try. Question is whether people will believe him." I thought about Simon's charm, his ability to convince people that his version of events was the reasonable one. In a contest of credibility, he had advantages I didn't. "What would you do?" I asked. "I'd make sure my story got told first, and I'd make sure it was bulletproof." "How?" "You still got those photos?" "Yeah." "Make more copies. Spread them around. Hard to argue with pictures." "To who?" "People who matter. People who talk. People who can make his life complicated." After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and thought about escalation, about the difference between justice and revenge. Simon had started something he couldn't finish, and now he wanted to negotiate terms that would let him escape consequences. That wasn't how consequences worked. My phone rang. Margot. "Simon came home last night," she said. "How'd that go?" "He wants to go to counseling. Says we can work through this." "What do you want?" "I want to understand how I married someone I don't recognize." "Maybe you always recognized him. You just didn't want to admit what you were seeing." Margot was quiet for a moment. "He says you threatened him." "I told him to stay away from Claudia and tell you the truth." "He says you're going to ruin his business." "His business will be fine as long as he behaves himself. And if he doesn't, then his business becomes his problem, not mine. Bennett, I appreciate what you're doing, but I don't want you to destroy your life trying to fix mine." "I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just making sure people know who they're dealing with." "That sounds like revenge. That sounds like information." After lunch, I drove to Exchange Street and parked outside Claudia's office. Her PR consulting business occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house, sharing space with a yoga studio and a massage therapist. The kind of place where people came to improve themselves, or at least pretend they were trying. I climbed the stairs and knocked on her door. "Come in." Claudia sat behind a desk covered with client files and marketing materials, looking professional and composed except for the red eyes that suggested she'd spent the morning crying. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to know what you're planning." "Planning?" "Simon paid me a visit this morning, wanted to negotiate a solution that would let everyone save face." "And?" "I told him the time for negotiation was over." Claudia leaned back in her chair, studying me with the calculating expression she used when developing PR strategies for clients in crisis. "You're angry," she said. "I understand that, but anger makes people do stupid things." "Stupid like having an affair with your husband's brother-in-law? Stupid like destroying 2 marriages over a mistake? It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You made it every Thursday for 6 weeks. And now I'm making a different choice. Which is? To save our marriage." I looked around her office, at the awards on the walls and the photos of successful PR campaigns. Claudia was good at her job because she understood how to control narratives, how to shape public perception to benefit her clients. You can't PR your way out of this, I said. I can try. What does that mean? It means I know things about you that might change how people see this situation. Such as your drinking problem. That caught me off guard. My what? The bourbon in your workshop, the beer with lunch, the way you disappear into the basement when you're stressed. I don't have a drinking problem. People might see it differently if they knew how much time you spend down there with a bottle. I stared at her, trying to process the fact that my wife was threatening to lie about me to cover up her affair. You're going to claim I'm an alcoholic? I'm going to claim you're an unreliable narrator with a substance abuse problem and a history of paranoid behavior. Paranoid behavior? Hiring a private investigator to follow your wife. Normal husbands don't do that. Normal wives don't have affairs. Normal wives don't have husbands who ignore them for months at a time. So this is my fault. This is nobody's fault. It's just what happened. I stood up, recognizing that the conversation had moved beyond reason into the realm of strategic deception. Good luck with that story, I said. Where are you going? To make sure people hear the true version before they hear yours. Bennett, wait. But I was already walking toward the door, leaving her to develop whatever narrative she thought would save her reputation. Some stories were stronger than others, and some were supported by photographic evidence. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern and found Rita behind the bar, polishing glasses and listening to the day's gossip from her regular customers. Bennett, she said when I approached, you look like a man with something on his mind. I need a favor. What kind of favor? I pulled out one of the photo sets Finch had prepared. I need people to see these. Rita opened the envelope and studied the contents, her expression growing more interested with each image. Your wife and Simon Trent, she said. Every Thursday for 6 weeks. Son of a gun. She looked up at me. You want this to get around? I want people to know the truth before they hear lies. Rita nodded slowly. She understood how information worked in a small city, how truth and fiction competed for attention in the marketplace of gossip. Leave it with me, she said. By tomorrow night, everyone who matters will know what Simon and Claudia have been up to. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. This kind of thing gets messy fast. It's already messy. It's about to get messier. She was right, but some kinds of mess were cleaner than others. The mess of truth was easier to navigate than the mess of lies, even when the truth was ugly. I drove home through streets that would soon be buzzing with gossip about Thursday meetings and motel rooms, about marriages that weren't what they appeared to be, and people who weren't who they pretended to be. Change was coming, fast and inevitable as a storm front moving across the landscape. The only question was, who would still be standing when it passed? Saturday morning brought the kind of autumn sunshine that made everything look deceptively peaceful. I was in my workshop, applying finish to the Henderson bookshelf, when my phone started ringing. It rang consistently for 2 hours. The first call was from my cousin Mike. Bennett, what the heck is going on? Rita's showing pictures of Claudia and Simon all over town. The second was from Mrs. Henderson, asking if the bookshelf would be ready on schedule despite my personal difficulties. The third was from Claudia's business partner, Mara, who wanted to know if the photos were real and what it meant for their PR firm. By noon, I'd received 17 calls, 12 text messages, and 3 visitors. News traveled fast in a city where everyone knew everyone else's business, and Rita had been efficient in her distribution of information. My phone rang again. Margot. Simon's freaking out, she said without preamble. His office has been getting calls all morning, clients asking questions, business partners wanting explanations. How are you doing? I'm fine. Tired of people asking if I knew, but fine. Did you know? I suspected. I didn't want to believe it. There's a difference. Yeah, there is. I could hear voices in the background, Simon's among them, raised and agitated. "What's he saying?" I asked. "He's saying you've destroyed his reputation over a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? His word, not mine. What do you call it? I call it grounds for divorce. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store for wood stain and found myself the center of attention in a way I'd never experienced. People I barely knew approached me with condolences, advice, and thinly veiled requests for more details about the affair. "Bennett," said Tom Morrison, whose dresser I'd finished the previous month. "Sorry to hear about your troubles." "Thanks, Tom. If you need anything, someone to talk to or whatever, just let me know." "I appreciate it." That Simon always seemed a little slick to me. You know the type. I did know the type, but I hadn't expected to be married into it. At the checkout counter, Jenny Walsh leaned forward conspiratorially. "Is it true they had a regular room at the Sleepy Inn?" "I wouldn't know about that." "Rita says they had the same routine every week, like clockwork." "Rita knows more than I do." But Jenny's question told me everything I needed to know about how the story was spreading. Details were multiplying, growing more specific with each retelling. By evening, the affair would have taken on mythic proportions in the city's collective imagination. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This ends now." I called Finch. "Someone's feeling pressured," he said after I read him the message. "Simon or Claudia?" "Could be either. Could be both. People do stupid things when they're cornered." "What kind of stupid things?" "Depends on how desperate they get. Your wife's got a business to protect. Your brother-in-law's got a reputation to save. They might try to flip the script." "How?" "Make you the villain. Crazy husband, stalker behavior, maybe violence if they're really creative." "I haven't been violent." "Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in situations like this." "So what do I do?" "You stay visible, stay calm, and you document everything. Every contact, every threat, every attempt to manipulate the narrative." That evening, I was finishing dinner when someone knocked on my front door. I opened it to find Claudia and Simon standing on my porch, both of them looking like people who'd spent the day in crisis management mode. "We need to talk," Claudia said. "No, we don't." "Bennett, please. This has gotten out of hand." I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Whatever conversation they wanted to have, it wasn't happening in my house. "What do you want?" "We want you to call off the dogs," Simon said. "Tell people this was all a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" "The photos don't tell the whole story." "What story do they tell?" Claudia stepped forward. "We were helping each other through difficult marriages. It was emotional support, not an affair." "Emotional support that required a motel room?" "We needed privacy to talk." "You needed privacy to talk, so you rented the same room every Thursday for 6 weeks?" "It wasn't what it looked like." I studied their faces, searching for any sign that they believed their own story. Claudia looked desperate but determined, like someone who'd committed to a lie and planned to defend it regardless of evidence. Simon looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "You're going to claim you weren't having an affair," I said. "We're going to tell the truth. The truth is in the photos. The photos show us talking. The photos show you kissing. That was comfort between friends. Friends don't comfort each other in motel rooms." Simon finally spoke up. "Bennett, you're destroying both our lives over something that meant nothing." "If it meant nothing, why did you do it every week for 6 weeks?" "Because we were confused." "You were confused, so you decided to be confused together, in private, every Thursday." "Yes." "And you think people are going to believe that?" "We think people will listen to reason." I looked at them standing on my porch, 2 people who'd made choices and now wanted to escape the consequences through creative storytelling. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to leave my property and never come back. You're going to stop contacting me, stop threatening me, and stop trying to rewrite history. And if we don't? Simon asked. Then I release the rest of the photos. What rest? The ones Finch took this week. The ones showing you together after you claimed it was over. That was a lie, but it had the desired effect. Both of them went pale, realizing that their Thursday meeting might not have been their final surveillance. You're still having us followed? Claudia asked. I'm protecting myself from people who've already proven they can't be trusted. This is harassment. This is documentation. Simon stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. You think you're so smart, Bennett, but you're not the only one who can play games. What's that supposed to mean? It means you might want to be careful about throwing stones when you live in a glass house. My house isn't made of glass. Everyone's house is made of glass if you know where to look. Claudia grabbed Simon's arm. Let's go. This isn't helping. But Simon wasn't finished. You want a war, Bennett? You'll get a war, but don't expect to come out of it looking like the hero. They left, walking quickly to Simon's BMW and driving away with the urgency of people who'd just made threats they weren't sure they could back up. I went inside and called Finch again. They just escalated, I told him. How? Threats. Vague, but definitely threats. You record any of it? No, but I can describe the conversation. Description won't hold up if they try something. You need to be more careful. Careful how? Assume they're documenting everything too. Assume they're looking for ways to make you look unstable. I'm not unstable. Doesn't matter. Angry husbands are easy targets. One wrong move and you become the story instead of them. Sunday morning brought more phone calls and a visit from Detective Hardy, who sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Bennett, I need to ask you about some allegations. What kind of allegations? Simon Trent filed a complaint yesterday. Says you've been harassing him and his wife. His wife is my sister. Says you've been following them, making threats, trying to damage his business. I set my coffee cup down and looked at Hardy directly. He'd been a cop for 20 years, long enough to recognize the difference between truth and creative fiction. Did he mention why I might be interested in his activities? He mentioned marital difficulties. Did he mention the affair? Hardy's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. What affair? I pulled out one of the photo sets and spread it across the kitchen table. Hardy studied them without comment, his cop instincts processing evidence and drawing conclusions. How long? He asked. 6 weeks that we know of. Professional surveillance? Alistair Finch. Hardy nodded. He knew Finch's reputation, knew the photos would hold up under scrutiny. So, Simon's claiming harassment while he's having an affair with your wife. That's about the size of it. And you haven't made any threats? I told him to stay away from Claudia and tell Margot the truth. That's it? That's it. Hardy gathered the photos and handed them back to me. Bennett, I can't tell you how to handle your personal life, but I can tell you to be smart about it. Meaning? Meaning Simon's looking for ways to make you the bad guy. Don't give him ammunition. I haven't done anything illegal. Legal and smart aren't the same thing. This situation's got all the ingredients for someone to do something stupid. Someone already did something stupid. Someone might do something stupider. After Hardy left, I spent the afternoon in my workshop, trying to focus on the bookshelf, but finding my attention wandering to the implications of Simon's complaint. He was trying to control the narrative, make himself the victim of harassment rather than the perpetrator of adultery. It was a smart strategy, the kind of misdirection that worked well in real estate negotiations. Create doubt about the other party's motives, make their evidence look suspect, position yourself as the reasonable person trying to resolve an unfortunate misunderstanding. But strategy only worked if people believed it, and belief required credibility. Simon's credibility was about to face a more serious test than he realized. My phone rang. Rita. You need to get down here, she said. Why? Because Simon and Claudia are here, and they're telling everyone who'll listen that you're stalking them. Are people believing it? Some are. Others remember the photos. But you need to tell your side before their version takes root. I'll be right there. Murphy's Tavern on a Sunday evening hosted a different crowd than weeknight regulars. Families finishing dinner, couples on dates, people who came for the food rather than the alcohol. A more diverse audience for whatever performance Simon and Claudia were staging. I found them at a corner table, surrounded by people I recognized from around town. Simon was talking animatedly, gesturing with his hands the way he did when trying to close a difficult sale. Claudia sat beside him, nodding sadly at appropriate moments. "Bennett," Rita called from behind the bar. "Come here." I walked over, aware that conversations were stopping as people noticed my arrival. "What are they saying?" I asked quietly. "They're saying the photos were taken out of context, that they were meeting to discuss your drinking problem and Margot's depression." "Margot's not depressed. They're saying she is. They're saying you both have been acting erratic lately, and they were trying to figure out how to help." "And people believe that?" "Some do. Others are asking why they needed a motel room to discuss family problems." I looked across the room at Simon and Claudia, at the people listening to their carefully constructed version of events. Some faces showed skepticism, others showed sympathy. Truth and fiction were competing for attention in real time. "What do you want me to do?" Rita asked. "Nothing. Let them talk." "You're not going to defend yourself?" "I'm going to let them finish digging." Because that's what they were doing, whether they realized it or not. Every lie required supporting lies. Every fabrication demanded additional fabrications. The more elaborate their story became, the more opportunities it created for contradiction and exposure. Simon noticed me watching and said something to Claudia. She looked over, her expression shifting from sad victim to defiant adversary in the space of a heartbeat. They were committed now, locked into a narrative that required them to be victims rather than perpetrators. It was a dangerous game, but it was the only game they had left. I finished my beer and left the tavern, driving home through streets that buzzed with competing versions of the same story. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new complications, new opportunities for truth and fiction to collide. The final act was beginning, and everyone had chosen their roles. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made everything feel possible. I was in my workshop early, putting the finishing touches on the Henderson bookshelf, when my phone rang. Mara, Claudia's business partner. "Bennett, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Claudia, about the business, about what happens next." "What does happen next?" "That depends on whether you're interested in the truth or just revenge." "I'm interested in both." "Can you meet me for lunch, somewhere private?" We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where conversations could be held without attracting attention. Mara arrived first, already seated in a corner booth with coffee and the expression of someone who'd spent the weekend making difficult decisions. "How long have you known?" I asked after ordering. "About the affair? 6 weeks? About the Thursday meetings? Since the beginning? And you didn't say anything." "Claudia's my business partner. I was hoping she'd come to her senses." "Did she?" "No. If anything, she's gotten worse." Mara pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. Claudia asking her to lie to clients, to provide alibis, to support the story that the affair was actually marriage counseling. "She wants me to tell people that you're unstable," Mara said, "that you've been drinking heavily and making threats." "Are you going to?" "No. But I'm also not going to keep covering for her." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm dissolving our partnership. I can't work with someone I don't trust." "Because of the affair?" "Because of the lying. The affair was between her and you. The lying affects everyone." Mara leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Bennett, there's something else you need to know. What? Claudia's been talking to a lawyer, not about divorce, about harassment charges. Based on what? Based on whatever story she thinks will stick. I haven't harassed anyone. I know that. But she's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. What kind of desperate things? The kind that turn victims into villains and villains into victims. After lunch, I drove to Margot's house and found her in her garden, pulling weeds with the methodical precision she applied to everything in her life. How are you holding up? I asked. Better than expected. You? About the same. She sat back on her heels and looked at me. Simon moved out this morning. Where'd he go? Hotel, I assume. He took 2 suitcases and his golf clubs. How do you feel about that? Relieved, mostly. It's hard to live with someone when you don't know who they really are. Did he say anything before he left? He said this was all your fault, that you'd destroyed 2 marriages over a misunderstanding. Do you believe that? I believe Simon will say whatever makes him feel better about his choices. Margot pulled another weed and added it to the pile beside her. Bennett, I want you to know something. What? Whatever happens next, I'm glad you told me the truth. I'd rather know who I'm married to than live with a comfortable lie. Even if the truth is ugly? Especially if the truth is ugly. That evening, I was reading in my den when someone threw a rock through my front window. The glass shattered inward, covering the floor with glittering fragments that caught the lamplight like scattered stars. I called the police. Detective Hardy arrived 20 minutes later, surveying the damage with the weary expression of someone who'd seen this kind of escalation before. Any idea who might have done this? He asked. I can think of 2 possibilities. Simon and Claudia, or someone who believes their version of events. Hardy walked around the room, noting the trajectory of the rock, the pattern of broken glass, the location where it had finally come to rest. Rock came from the street, he said, thrown hard, probably by someone with a good arm. Can you do anything about it? I can file a report, maybe dust for prints, though rocks aren't great for that. But probably nothing will come of it. Probably not, unless you've got security cameras or witnesses. I didn't have either, which meant the rock thrower would remain anonymous, but anonymity worked both ways, and some messages were clearer than others. Hardy, I said as he prepared to leave. Yeah? This is just the beginning, isn't it? Probably. Things like this tend to escalate before they resolve. Any advice? Document everything. Stay visible. Don't do anything that gives them ammunition. And if they keep escalating? Then we deal with it when it happens. After he left, I swept up the glass and taped cardboard over the broken window. The damage was minor, easily repaired, but the message was clear. The game had moved beyond words and photographs into the realm of physical intimidation. I called Finch. Someone threw a rock through my window. Simon? Can't prove it, but the timing's suspicious. They're feeling the pressure. Good. Good? Means your strategy's working. They're making mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that prove they're not victims. What do you mean? Victims don't throw rocks through windows. Perpetrators do. Tuesday brought a new development. I was having coffee at the diner when Jenny Walsh approached my table with the eager expression of someone carrying fresh gossip. Bennett, did you hear about Simon's office? What about it? Someone spray-painted liar across his front window, big red letters visible from the street. When? Sometime last night. Police are calling it vandalism. Any suspects? Well, people are talking. I could imagine what people were talking about, and none of it would be helpful to my situation. The rock through my window, followed by vandalism at Simon's office, created a pattern that suggested escalating retaliation between warring parties. Jenny, I said carefully, I hope people understand that vandalism doesn't solve anything. Oh, I know, but some folks think Simon had it coming. Some folks need to let the law handle things. You're probably right. But Jenny's expression suggested she found the drama more entertaining than concerning. Small-town scandals provided entertainment value that transcended moral considerations, and the story of Thursday affairs and broken windows was better than anything on television. My phone buzzed. Text from Margot. Simon called. Says you vandalized his office. I typed back, I didn't. I know, but he's telling everyone you did. Let him talk. He's also saying he's going to press charges. For what? Harassment, vandalism, stalking. Based on what evidence? Based on whatever evidence he thinks he can manufacture. That afternoon, I drove past Simon's office and saw the spray-painted window for myself. Liar, in red letters, visible from 3 blocks away, impossible to ignore. Professional, even lettering that suggested someone with experience in sign-making or graphic design, or someone who wanted it to look professional. I parked across the street and studied the vandalism, trying to read the message behind the message. The paint was fresh, applied sometime between midnight and dawn when the street would have been empty. No security cameras visible, no witnesses likely, but something about the lettering bothered me. It was too perfect, too carefully executed for spontaneous vandalism. Real graffiti showed urgency, emotion, the kind of imperfection that came from working quickly in poor light. This looked like a sign. My phone rang. Finch. You see Simon's window? I'm looking at it now. What do you think? I think someone wanted to make a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that gets blamed on someone else. You think Simon did it himself? I think Simon's desperate enough to try anything. False flag operation? It's been done before. Can you prove it? Not without evidence, but the timing's convenient. How so? Rock through my window last night, vandalism at his office this morning. Creates a pattern of escalating retaliation that makes me look like the aggressor. Smart, if you're right. Smart and desperate. What do you want to do about it? I want to set a trap. What kind of trap? The kind that makes people reveal who they really are. That evening, I called both Simon and Claudia and left identical voicemails. We need to end this. Meet me at the parking garage on Commercial Street tomorrow night at 8. Top level. Come alone and we'll settle this once and for all. Then I called Finch and Margot and told them to be there at 7:30 with cameras. Some conversations required witnesses, and some truths needed documentation. The trap was set. Wednesday night arrived with a cold wind that rattled the windows and made everything feel like the prelude to something significant. I drove to the Commercial Street parking garage at 7:15, taking the ramp to the top level where the city spread out below like a circuit board of lights and possibilities. Finch was already there, positioned behind a concrete pillar with a camera that could document conversations from 50 yards away. Margot arrived 10 minutes later, parking near the stairwell with a clear view of the meeting area. At exactly 8 o'clock, Simon's BMW appeared at the top of the ramp, followed 30 seconds later by Claudia's Honda. They parked side by side and got out, looking around nervously before approaching the spot where I waited. You wanted to talk, Simon said. So talk. I want this to end. So do we. Then stop lying about what happened. Claudia stepped forward. We're not lying. We're telling our side of the story. Your side involves spray painting your own office? Simon's face went pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the liar on your window. Professional lettering, perfect spacing, applied with the kind of care that suggests familiarity with sign making. You're accusing me of vandalizing my own office? I'm suggesting that desperate people do desperate things. That's ridiculous. Is it? You throw a rock through my window, then vandalize your own office to make it look like retaliation. I didn't throw any rock. Then who did? Simon looked at Claudia, and something passed between them. A glance, a moment of recognition, a silent acknowledgement of shared guilt. We don't know, Claudia said, but you have suspicions. We think you're trying to frame us. Frame you for what? For things we didn't do. I walked closer to them, close enough to see the tension in their faces, the way they kept glancing at each other for support. Here's what I think happened, I said. You realized that people weren't buying your story about emotional support and marriage counseling. So you decided to make me look like the aggressor. Rock through my window, vandalism at Simon's office, maybe a few anonymous tips to the police about my supposed drinking problem. That's paranoid, Simon said. Is it? Because someone's been working very hard to make me look unstable. Maybe you are unstable. Maybe you're projecting. Claudia tried a different approach. Bennett, what do you want from us? I want the truth. You have the truth. The photos, the evidence, everything. I want you to stop trying to rewrite history. We're not rewriting anything. You're claiming the affair was marriage counseling. We're claiming it wasn't what it looked like. What did it look like? It looked like two people having an affair. Because that's what it was. Claudia's composure finally cracked. Fine. Yes, we had an affair. Are you happy now? I'm satisfied. We made mistakes. We hurt people. We're sorry. Sorry you got caught. Sorry it happened. Simon stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry I had an affair with your wife. I'm sorry I lied to Margot. I'm sorry the whole thing happened. And the rock through my window? I didn't throw any rock. The vandalism at your office? I didn't vandalize my own office. Then who did? Simon looked around the parking garage, at the shadows and concrete pillars, at the city lights twinkling below. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more defeated. I don't know, he said. Maybe someone who thinks I deserved it. Maybe someone who knows you deserved it. Maybe. Claudia was crying now, tears that looked genuine but might have been calculated. What happens now? Now you face the consequences. What consequences? Divorce, public embarrassment, loss of reputation, the things that happen when people make choices. And you? I rebuild my life without people I can't trust. That's it? That's enough. Simon walked back to his car, his shoulders sagging with the weight of admission. Claudia followed, pausing at her Honda to look back at me. I did love you, she said. Not enough. No, not enough. They drove away separately, disappearing down the ramp into the city below. I stood alone on the top level of the parking garage, looking out at the lights and thinking about endings and beginnings, about the difference between justice and revenge. Finch emerged from behind his pillar, camera in hand. Get what you needed? He asked. I got what I needed. Margot joined us, her face showing a mixture of sadness and relief. How do you feel? She asked. Like someone who just finished a job he never wanted to start. And now? Now we move forward. Together? As family, as people who know the truth and can live with it. We walked to the stairwell together, leaving the parking garage and the confrontation behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new opportunities to build something better from the wreckage of what came before. But tonight, the truth was finally spoken, recorded, and witnessed. The lies were exposed, the patterns broken, the consequences accepted. Thursday would never be the same, but that was exactly the point. The story was over. The aftermath was just beginning. But that's another story entirely.